Hi, welcome to Monticello Trails Middle School Classroom Museum. My name is Keil Hileman. This is a part of my Global Teacher Prize application. It's a video explaining about the museum, its history, and some of the stories of the special artifacts because it's an unusual program and I wanted to make sure you could see how it all evolved and happened. Before we get going, that's my email, keilhusd232.org. Anybody seeing this video, if you can connect with me and we can do stuff between classes, it's an open invitation. Teachers should help each other and we can go farther together. Just a neat idea. All right, so the museum is over 20,000 artifacts. But if you just add up all the artifacts in our dig tubs, we have 25,000. So honestly, best estimate is over 100,000 teaching artifacts after 24 years. Not everybody needs 100,000 artifacts. Science loves artifacts. Physics teachers love artifacts. Math teachers have manipulatives. But history is the hub of all education. History connects everything. Everything has a story. But after 24 years, people have just gotten excited about the museum and kept donating things, so it grew. But our whole museum started with 2 Civil War bullets. Literally 24 years ago in a trailer, I was teaching about the Civil War. I did what I was supposed to. Textbook, worksheets, chapter section reviews. And we took the test. And I said, you know what, let's go a little farther. A reward, you all did great, A's and B's. Let's watch a movie. Got permission for me. We watched the movie Glory with Denzel Washington and Matthew Broderick. All the girls fell in love with Denzel Washington, and all the boys loved Matthew Broderick because he's in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But when we got to the battle scene, black and white, fighting together for freedom, the kids laughed and said, that's ridiculous. One bullet couldn't kill you. And as the British would say, I was very PO'd. I was put out. So I bought Civil War bullets. This is a dropped Civil War bullet, perfectly intact, never fired, oxidized from sitting in the battlefield. It's a Minier with the really cool rings to build up more pressure so it spins, it's more accurate. The end, so the explosion puts pressure there, and there's your intact bullet. And I also bought bullets that hit someone or something that have mushroomed out. And I told the kids these are horrific artifacts. It may hit and make an entryway. And there are documented stories from the Civil War. We need to know, did it go through and through or is it still in the body? It's lead. And there might be dirty cloth or uniform in there and that's sepsis, blood poisoning, got to get it out. And they would roll the body over and their entire back would fall off because the bullet had gone in, hit the bone, shattered, and exploded in every direction and just pushed the back off. I told my students those stories. Today, in my 8th grade classes, I actually show the beginning of Dances with Wolves, the director's cut, because it has an extended scene of the hospital, a Civil War hospital, which is slightly terrifying but very, very cool. My kids 24 years ago heard these stories. I told them about doctors amputating because they didn't have any other solution. I told them about the TV show Star Trek from the 60s, that the doctor was called Bones because all doctors in the Civil War started being called Sawbones. We watched the last 15 minutes of the movie together, black and white, dying together, fighting for freedom. And nobody laughed. Nobody talked. And a few of my students actually cried. And I was hooked. Immediately I realized a little piece of lead designed to kill a human being, to take a life, just taught better than all my worksheets and textbooks. I was on fire. I was hooked. And people brought things in, some on loan, some donations. And I had a grandma write me a really cool letter. If I knew then what I know now, it'd be framed in gold by the front door. But I've misplaced over the years. I did not know what was going to happen. And the letter simply said, you've inspired my grandson. He comes in early to be with you. He eats lunch with you. He stays after school to talk. And I want you to have these artifacts, but make me a promise. Always teach with them and never sell them. And that was our museum credo from the very beginning. And 24 years later, we sit with well over 100,000 teaching artifacts. But it started with 2 Civil War bullets. Now, I wanted you to see the whole museum, and it's kind of hard. This is the entrance with the door closed. There's our doll display case, miniature Victorian museum, Victorian doll, some little houses, a Greek vase decoration, some banners, airplanes around the world decorated to show culture, ships from ancient cultures all around the world. That's the door open. There's our gas pump, cool stuff. And here's our, whoops, sorry, my alarm's going off to tell me there's kids coming on a bus, but not today. That is our doll display. And it has worked out very well. There's 2 African tribal heads, always male and female together. There's a hijab, or hijab. Very cool. The girls are always curious why, and we talk about the culture and religion. Here we have Japanese dolls actually making dolls, which is just too much fun. And more dolls. Dolls of the world from Barbie, dolls from around the world from grandmas and grandpas. There's some very scary 1940s Cupies. More Barbie dolls from around the world, different cultures. and then random dolls that students have found over the years to teach with. These are the dig tables that we put together. The lids come off, filled with moon play sand, regular sand, tools that I acquired from Walmart. I can't use regular archaeology tools, they're too dangerous, but these simulated tools work fantastic. And then I can also have a regular classroom. So this is what the room would look like, desks closed, everything clean, ready for a new class to walk in. And right now I actually have high school students in the middle of a dig mapping artifacts. I was going to film this video on a Sunday morning with nobody here, but it didn't feel right. So I just asked them if I could film while they're digging, and they said yes, they're very kind. I also gave them a free day of homework, so they're enjoying that. So if you look at the classroom, there's the desks. And then there's a class actually taking notes, video clips, lecture, artifacts pass around. The desks work for that. But if you also look at them, regular study notes, and then the lid's off, they're all digging. I can also turn the room into a simulated archaeological dig, and whatever I bury, 6th grade does world cultures, treasures, 7th grade does a Native American dig, 8th grade does a Civil War battlefield, and the high school does prehistoric dinosaur remains. Now this is fun. You'll notice all the kids are smiling. If you see all the little smiles again, that's because I made them sit down. When they dig, 99% of the children would prefer, I'm trying to click it here, would prefer to stand up. So in a normal dig, everybody's up and moving around. High school tends to stay down because they map everything. Middle school is just recovery, cleaning, and explanation. Okay, we raised a lot of money through sales to actually buy display cases and fill them in the hall. These are 1800 bottles, 1900s artifacts, more 1800s artifacts, 1900s artifacts. This is our camera collection, video collection, goes all the way back to the 1890s, and then rocks, geodes, fossils, and minerals. And that's a 65-million-year-old petrified crocodile skull. Still has 42 teeth. I drove all the way to Colorado to make a connection on that one. Cave bear skull, and a sea turtle skull that I picked up at Padre Island, rotting on the beach. Totally awesome, and found out I was breaking 13 federal laws by doing so. But I've been granted a waiver so I could teach with it. Turns out there's all kinds of mysteries. We don't know how long sea turtles live. Best estimate is 400 to 600 years, which means there may be sea turtles still swimming around that have been around since the time of Columbus. At the bottom, I've got a British castle being attacked by a French army. All right. Hallway storage. We are in the smallest room we've ever been in. I've moved 5 times within the building, and it's a lot of work, but we do what we do to survive. So I have a lot of extra storage rooms where I go and pull boxes to teach with. And then the activity center is where I keep most of the dig equipment and the artifacts for the simulated digs. But if you look at just some of the tubs, and there's over 60 tubs missing because we're in the middle of 2 digs right now. If you take 32 tubs, 4 digs, 128 tubs, each tub has at least 200 artifacts. The 6th grade's closer to 400, but let's say 200. You come up with 25,600 artifacts just in the tubs, not what's in the room or the storage closets. So we've got a lot of cool artifacts. We're not a rich school. We're not a poor school. I'd say low middle class. We're doing very well, and I'm very fortunate to be here. But this is not a rich thing. This is a community and citizens and parents and businesses coming together to do something that felt right. In the end, the best way I've ever heard a parent describe my class is it's the history class we all wish we had when we were growing up. And to be quite blunt, I try and teach my students and connect with them the way I wish I'd been taught. I'm a good salesman, but I didn't do all this alone in 24 years. I am a fire starter. I have a lot of sparks I get going out there and get people excited. But I've had people who've read about me or seen pictures or videos on YouTube who send me artifacts from Connecticut, Wisconsin, Manitoba, who have never met me or never been here, but they know their artifact belongs here to teach with. So it's been good. Lots of newspapers, and I forgot on that other slide, newspapers. I was honored to be in a book with 50 other teachers across my country. And it's a great honor. They started with 5,000, narrowed it down to 500, and then 50. But in the end, they had extra books. They printed thousands for a big international education award and had extra. They called every teacher in the book and said, do you want any cheap books to sell at your school? I'm the only one who said yes. So 90 people ordered the books, $15 a book. And the president of the company called and said, Kyle, we love your museum. We have pictures in our staff lounge. We want to do something cool. We're going to take the money you sent us and just call it shipping. And we're going to donate extra books to you. Well, I thought that would be several hundred. He sent 3,000, 2,800, 3,000 books. 3 full pallets. We had to knock out the center post, bring them in. This is what's left of those books that we sell to raise money to help support our museum. Anything that works, we do. Then we have more newspapers that are being laminated and pressed. We have a huge newspaper collection. This is an 1800s bed. Not a single bed, not a double, not a king, not a queen, not a California king. It's a 3/4 bed. Not even a full-size bed. In my archaeology classes, you'll get some pictures here in a second, do a cool unit. We have stoves across the building. That's a cloud stove, pre-Civil War, 1840s, 1850s. This is a round oak vertical stove. That would be more of a range, actually, because it's flat like the open range. This is in a 6th grade classroom. This is in an 8th grade hallway to teach with. The museum idea of artifact teaching is very transferable. I know that's a concern of the grant. What, you've done something cool, but how can it transfer? We have 4 mini museums in elementary schools in the district. We have an artifact resource center being created in a nearby school district. The art teacher and I are good friends. She took all the extra cameras I had duplicates of, and she has her students draw pictures of them. She has lots of extra artifacts that I have allowed her to use or given to her to teach with. Okay, simulated archaeological dig. And if there's a star that comes up, that means this is one of the 4 pictures I submitted. So that is a picture of a dig with 7th grade in progress, right? And then these are all the pictures you didn't get to see. So I thought I'd put them in here so you can see how they dig and how they discover art. She found a perfectly intact arrowhead, was giddy. He found a little tiny trade bead and was not sure why we kept it. And then he found out that was money. That's how they traded wealth. And just kids digging, seeing new artifacts. She's absolutely giddy. She just found a baby bison jawbone that after 12 years of digs, I had put everything together. I just missed it. I never saw it before. So awesome. So she was on fire. Roman shields. I had a boy make a Roman shield. Every student creates a textbook in my classroom. They then have to write a 1-page paper, make a physical project, and share it with the class using technology. Well, he made the most awesome Roman shield. And I made the mistake. Never challenge a middle school child or an angry high school kid. I said, I wish I had 32 shields. And he went home with Grandpa and made us 36 shields. So we do a Roman shield activity where we line up. I take his original shield, which is a little bigger and a little heavier, and we talk about the phalanx, the walls, the lines. This is the picture that I submitted, but I thought you would have fun seeing all the other practice moves, and I always love the smiles who are laughing at the camera, and the ones that are in the back going, I'm not sure if I'm doing this right, or he's worried about getting hit on the head. Everybody's having a good time. And then I had a boy who said, well, the Romans had swords called gladiuses, so he actually made us LARP, live action role play gladiuses. Oh my gosh. And that's the first time that we actually took a picture with it because it's usually pretty scary, but fun. And I ran out of swords, which is even more fun. Okay, one of the other pictures we submitted is the high school class doing a knighting ceremony. So she has his riding jousting helmet. There would be the regular helmet, but he stole it to ride. More chainmail to be worn. Chainmail hood. Arming cap. He's wearing a suit of armor. A sword made by an 8th grader. That's a 2x16 plank. Carved and whittled and polished over a semester to become a metal, well, it's a wood sword that looks like metal. Arming shield for jousting. And then a trumpet to announce his attendance. And everybody gathered and we all get to try it on. The cape is actually a riding cape, copied off of George Washington, so that when you're on your horse, the cape goes over the horse and gathers the body warmth. The armor, once again, you can look at our museum and say, hey, it's a rich school. My students nominated me for a technology use grant. Nobody told me anything. Next thing I know, film crews came in, my wife, my parents, the superintendent. I just cut my finger, torn my pants. We're in the middle of a big dig, and they gave me a check for $1,500. And I found 3 companies that make armor, but one in India that would let me customize it so it had all the appropriate pieces to teach with. And we ordered a suit of armor. 7th grade tries it on every quarter, and the high school does every semester. Too much fun. And student-created Star Spangled Banner. Every 8th grader in my class studies the history of flags around the world and in the United States, and the fact that the rules of the flags and how they've changed are kind of hinky, sketchy, not clearly defined. And so they can interpret the rules, and this is an 8th grade boy's version of an American flag following the rules from 1790. That's a very artistic interpretation, but still fun. And then there's one using computer-assisted design to swirl it, but each student interprets it differently. 2 of my girls, Jill and Carly, came to me, and I've learned never crush a dream. If they have an idea and they're excited, support them. And they said, we want to sew the original Star Spangled Banner. And I'm like, guys, it's huge. The stars are 2 feet across. They sewed on their own the entire blue section, which would cover the entire room, 2-foot stars. And then their mom said, enough. The rest of the students were so inspired by these 2 girls and their work that they literally said, we can finish it. So they gathered all the material. We picked a Saturday. I prepared a cry speech at the end of the day when they failed, because I thought that was a very realistic possibility. They went around to all the different stores and collected material within 30 miles. They actually have different colors. If you notice, the reds don't all match. Neither do the whites or sections of the blue. It's like our country, made up of many different colors to create one thing. They experienced prejudice. They would not cut the material for teenagers. If I went or my wife went, they would cut whatever you needed. But for kids, they just gave them the chunks of cloth. So we had to trim it all here at school. Upset the kids. Good learning experience. And in the end, they did not give up. They showed up. The moms and grandmas brought sewing machines. The kids brought all the supplies. Kids who couldn't even be there donated thread and supplies to help. We started at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning. I got here at 6 o'clock to do the math and draw it on the board and figure out what we needed to make it work. And at about 8 o'clock Saturday night, we were done. Several dads showed up and they drank a lot of coffee and took pictures, but didn't help much. And in the end, everybody got there and we had an amazing day because 2 girls had a dream. That flag, and that's one of my submitted pictures, that flag is opened every semester by my 8th graders when we study the War of 1812. We also open it at PEP assemblies. We had an 8th grade boy make the small flag, because there were actually 2 flags. One flown during the battle, the storm flag, the little one, and the big one flown the morning of the victory. He made the little flag by himself. It's not perfect. It's actually missing a stripe. It should have 15, it has 14. But he went above and beyond by himself because he wanted to be a part of the story. We've opened it at the Lincoln Memorial, the White House, the Jefferson Memorial, and we take it to Arlington. And we always lay a wreath at Arlington Cemetery. Right here's the wreath because there's a headstone for Ronald Hemingway. He was killed in the Pentagon on September 11th, and his mom, Shirley, was our kitchen manager. And we go every year and lay a wreath, and every year we remember him. Okay, so here's the 1800s bed. You saw all the stuff packed into that closet. So we take all the wood that one of the students made, a rope bed. Then he bought the hemp rope, put it all together, and then we test rope versus springs. I will tell you, rope always wins. And if you've heard sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite, almost all my children, when I was little, they had me tuck them in really tight, and they called it burrito. Make me a burrito, Daddy. Tuck it in tight. Sleep tight. It's not the tight sheets, it's the ropes. Sleep with tight ropes, so you're suspended, and don't let bed bugs bite, which are horrific but fun. So they made the rope. We put it all together. I put out the word through the Mom Network and church, and a bunch of grandmas had extra bedding, extra quilts. I actually restuffed, big mistake, in summer, hot and sweaty, 2 goose down mattresses. And I can't tell you how many, I was tarred and feathered with sweat. It was gross. But it worked. And all of these go together. We put all the layers, layered it all up, and if you push on it, you'll literally sink 2 feet into it. And the rope bed is often considered by my students the most comfortable bed they'd ever laid in. The springs never wins. It's just too unstable, but quite fun. We even find springs like this literally in archaeology sites. And there are several stories about people being shot and using metal detectors to try and find the bullet, and it went haywire because they were laying on a new developed spring mattress and didn't know it. Okay, rope always wins, but it's still fun. Okay, museum student stories. The artifacts we show, and I'm going to do a few more artifacts here in a minute, connect my students to history in a different way. History can be the most boring, tortured subject you've ever had. But as you get older, you get a perspective to understand it differently. History is his story, her story, it's our story, and everything has a history. But if you don't see it or appreciate it, you just go right on by and you miss it. It's what happened in the past that helps us make good decisions today that hopefully make a better tomorrow. This is a Holocaust survivor, and he says, "My eyes have seen what no man should witness: gas chambers built by learned engineers, children imprisoned by educated physicians, infants killed by trained nurses, and women shot and burned by high school and college graduates. So I'm suspicious of education." And he's talking to teachers. My request is to help your students become more human, which is what I have tried to do. That's a bronze slave trade collar. Originally it was brass or bronze traded to buy human beings, then turned into a collar to be worn to show your wealth, or unfortunately hammered on somebody to show that you own them. And one of my best friend's mother, her dad was a minister. Joan was 70 years old. Her father was a minister, deceased, and he got it from his college professor at a Presbyterian missionary who actually went to the Congo, where they were having trials about the slave trade in the 1890s. So this has been passed through family. Would you like to guess what a bunch of her relatives wanted to do with that collar? Throw it away. It's a terrible thing. It's a horrible thing. Reality is, it is pretty shocking and hardcore. And right now it's on loan to a high school to teach a slavery unit. But when you hold it and you touch it and you see it, it reminds you it happened and we should not let it happen again. Now there's another fun story. I picked this picture because this cute little girl we have 8th graders study the Holocaust and Anne Frank. And she saw the Nazi flag. But a lot of my kids call it the spider, not the swastika, the spider, because of the movie Sound of Music. Oh, look, Daddy, it's the spider. And she said, oh my gosh, there's a guy in my neighborhood with that painted on his door. And I said, honey, it's got to be something else. You must be mistaken. It's probably Hindu or Buddhist or Sikh. It's not the swastika. No, it looks just like that. So she got sassy with me. I'm in bus 7, follow me home. So I parked behind bus number 7, got permission to leave early, and all the kids lined up in the back of the bus waving at me. And we followed bus 7, and she got back there and pointed, and sure enough, this man had painted his whole door red with a white circle and the black swastika. And I called the news, and they came out to investigate and interview him. And he told stories about loving Adolf Hitler and having birthday parties for him and thinking Nazism was wonderful. And because of that little girl and a donated flag by a veteran from World War II, that homeowners association had a meeting less than 3 days after that TV show aired and made a deal that no symbols of hate will be tolerated in that neighborhood. And that man had to paint his door because a little girl paid attention. So you never know what power an artifact's going to have. So we also took that when we talked about Eisenhower's 50th birthday down in Abilene, Kansas, and she dressed up in this beautiful costume from Alice Thomas. Alice Thomas was a veteran in my church, and I'm going to grab something for you. Alice came to our show, actually donated that uniform for students to wear. She was in the Navy in World War II. When Alice passed away, she left in her will for us to go to her graveside service. This is her burial flag. That is the young Alice Thomas. And these are her medals, and those are the shots fired at her funeral. When she brought that uniform to our museum night where students dress up and share artifacts, she actually asked the students to help her climb up on a desk. And I said, Alice, you're 72 years old. Do you really want to? And she said, let me tell a story. Okay. So Alice climbed up on the desk, and the girls had stockings on, hose. She pulled up her dress. Everybody paid attention at that point. And she said we couldn't afford stockings, and silk was rationed in World War II. So they took a mascara pen and painted a line up the back of their legs to make it look like if they got a tan and had the mascara line, it looked like they were wearing stockings, and the boys would think they were something special. Nothing better than a 72-year-old woman climbing on a desk in front of a room full of children telling that story, but it was awesome. She left us the dress, she left us her artifacts, her papers. I'm still actually going through a lot of her letters from World War II to her husband. Neat connections, neat connections. That's Abilene when everybody released the balloons and celebrated. Okay, so the 2 witches in the back are actually high school students now. And when they were in my class, they sewed this 14-layer colonial dress and made their younger sister dress up. They used it for Halloween that year. And she sewed the layers, or they sewed the layers, put it together, and she came and modeled it for the class and actually had pictures of her having to put on all the layers. Not an easy project, but they're seamstresses. That was their thing. The point of the museum is that everybody learns in a different way, and the projects allow you to seek your interests. Okay, so this one is intense. We do a lot of culture projects, nations, different cultures, tribes, anything the kids are interested in or anything we need to study for outcomes and objectives. And we were doing a lot with Africa. We had a teacher named Terry, and Miss Robin, Terry Robbins. She knew this awesome guy named Akat from Sudan who would come and talk about his village. That was the plan. 127th graders talking about the village. I'm 48 years old, and I would give up every award I've ever had to have a video of this moment because it was a life-altering event. But there were no cameras. He's just going to talk about his culture, and we're going to listen, take notes, and go from there. 120 kids. Akat's telling stories about his village. His name's Akat Arek. Wonderful man. Everybody's listening, sure expect. He has a really thick accent. And he is the blackest of black I have ever seen in my life. Beautiful dark skin, dark eyes. So the kids were mesmerized by him and his stories. But his accent caused them to really listen carefully, so they were dead quiet. And he then changed subjects about, I'm becoming a U.S. citizen, and if I pass my citizenship test, I can go back to my village and they won't kill me. And then I can help the students and the children and the food and the village and medicine. I can't wait to save their lives. Well, then the kids just went nuts. Hands went up like crazy. How are they going to kill you? There's a test? I didn't know there was a test. What's citizenship? How are you going to get that? It was insane. And he did the best thing anybody could ever do. Calm down. I will answer all your questions. And he told us about the Civil War in Sudan. He told us about watching his family be killed. He watched his family run and scatter, and that he hadn't seen his mom or his sister or his brother that he hoped were still alive. He talked about the family members that had been killed. He talked about running and hiding in rivers with dead bodies floating down, and he floated down with them to go to other countries so he could work his way over several years to get to the United States. He then said we joined with a church and started Jumpstart Sudan. And he told the kids that he was raising money to go back as a U.S. citizen and bring support to his village. And then one of the little boys who was always in trouble, there's always that rowdy, and I love him, but Dylan was always in trouble. Dylan stood up and said, can you have him leave for a minute? Can you have him go? Middle school kids have good ideas, they don't always know how to say it. He just needed a moment of privacy. So Terry took a cot out in the hall. And Dylan didn't sit down, and he looked at the kids and said, you know what? We've been saving money to fix up an old cash register in the museum. I think we have $550 in a lockbox in the museum to fix up this cool cash register. But you know what? They always talk about doing the right thing, making the right choice, helping other people. I think this is one of those times, and I think we should give the money to him. And he sat down. And then Sarah stood up, and then Kelsey, and then Lily. And I watched 120 kids all do the right thing and say the right thing without a single adult in the room talking to them. And we had 4 teachers in supervising strategically paced for behavior. We didn't need to do anything. And they decided as a group they wanted to. So I ran down to the room, got the box. Terry brought a cot back in. The kids were all fired up. Some of them were crying. A cot probably thought we were beating them. We were not. We let the first 3 kids that suggested this give him the box. And a cot started crying because we had just become the first financial donor to Jumpstart Sudan. So word spread. Building was on fire. A cot came back and talked to every other team, the other 7th grade team, both 6th, both 7th grade. As a school, we raised, and I'm sorry they're blurry. I couldn't find these pictures on the internet. It's so old, nobody has them saved. These are all from newspaper articles framed on my ceiling tiles. A lot of stuff on my ceiling. $1,492, $14.92. Got to be a number that triggers a memory there. And we gave that to him, and this picture was in the Kansas City Star newspaper. And within 4 weeks, he had over $20,000 donated because 7th graders made the right decision, inspired a building to take action, and told the city what was the right thing to do. Akkad has been back many times. He, for a while, even worked in the South Sudan government to help protect his village. They built a school. They took uniforms and supplies and books. And if you want a naughty laugh, I have a letter from the students and the teachers and one of the principals. Thank you so much for the books and the uniforms. It's amazing. And we noticed there are no uniforms for the teachers, but we're sure you'll send those next time. We helped them build a well, which meant fresh water, so people gathered in that village. We also helped them build a medical center, and a doctor moved there. So it became a culture saving point for that region. A millionaire called me about a year after this happened and asked, whatever happened to the old cash register? It's still here, it's beat up, it's not fixed up. And he said, I want to donate money for your kids to have that fixed up as a trophy, as a reward to them. And I said, oh, no. They want all your money to go to Jumpstart Sudan. And he said, I wrote a check for this much money to Jumpstart Sudan. And I want to fix that cash register. So we put together a package, found a really cool gentleman, Bill Hearing, out in on the East Coast, outside of New York, and sent it to him. And over 3 months, he worked on it. It's all fixed up now. It's the only cash register in our collection that's been fully restored. And for our kids at the time, it became a trophy, a reminder of what we did when we did the right thing. It then became an inspiration for the rest of the school. Since then, we have, goodness gracious, 2 or 3 wells. We raised money to build wells, fresh water in India, mostly villages of untouchables. We then worked through Heifer International for a cow and 2 or 3 goats. And it continues today. Kids connected to the world they live in. Students that care, because students have that in them if you allow it to happen. But the museum kept changing. I will tell you, there was a very nice young boy named Cody who moved away from this school, and he was in the class that voted to give the money to Akkad. He came back as a junior and came back to visit me and said hi, and saw the cash register and started crying. I didn't realize he had never seen it fixed up. And he said, you know, I've done a lot of things in my life, not a lot of good decisions, some really bad ones, but that's one decision I still hold on to that makes me proud, makes me feel like I did the right thing. So artifacts just sometimes have that power. Okay, now I'm going to turn on the lights so you can see a little bit better. At this point, I wanted to show you some specific artifacts and tell you stories about things that we have in the museum. And I think I'm going to shift over here. So I never know what's coming in. A woman in Romania heard about the museum and mailed me 100 Roman coins, which we're going to polish and try and identify. You know, they're not the fanciest, they're not gold, they're not silver, but they're almost 2,000 years old, and they're Roman coins. And who wouldn't want to look up old treasure and try and identify it, right? Kids find fossils in the streams. This one has us perplexed. It appears to be some sort of soft shell mollusk with a mouth like a crustacean that crawled around and ate. But Kansas was a prehistoric ocean. I get money from around the world on a weekly basis. Kids travel, their relatives travel, and they send it to us. Even a single button. So his name was Oliver P. Martin, Company F, 21st Missouri Infantry Veteran Volunteers. And he actually fought for the North out of Missouri. Remember, Civil War split families. It's one button. It says on the back he saved his whole uniform until it rotted. And then the family cut the buttons, framed him like this. He was at Shiloh, Tupelo, Fort Blakely, Alabama, all those battles. And then this is a list of everybody around the country who had a button. I inherited this one from a student when everybody else had passed away and they had extra buttons. One button that was in the Civil War that made it here. I don't need a uniform. I don't need hundreds of buttons. One button can tell a story. And don't laugh if you, I don't know if you can zoom in on that one or not, but the eagle looks like a big fat turkey because a lot of the Civil War soldiers honored Benjamin Franklin's wish to have our national bird be a turkey. Thank God they didn't listen to him. Are you good? Okay, so a fun button. Artifacts can be great for writing. Beautiful little girl, gold covered painting, green felt, somebody of wealth framed this picture. And the back was tearing off and I had to tape it. I saw a flash of gold. Open it up and there's a child's bracelet and the name is Emma Kiefer. Who is Emma? Why did they hide the bracelet in the back? You usually don't hide things you want to see. You hide things that hurt you, that you don't want to see. Out of sight, out of mind. So this is a writing activity. What happened to Emma? Did she die as a child? Did she grow up and just want to hide the bracelet? I don't know. We'll never know. You don't have to know where the artifact. You just have to decide if you want to teach with it. A Native American bowl made out of a gourd with the burn marks and the history of the gourd on the inside. And you need to know that if your students have the ability to grow them, like my Uncle David, they can grow them and hang them and let gravity stretch them out, polish off all the mold. I left it on there so you could see it. And once it's cleaned and stained, they can clean it open and make gourds or soup bowls out of them. So anything can teach. You just have to decide if it's something you can use and how to. One piece of Native American pottery tells the story, especially if it's painted. And you'll find a lot of these as construction site finds on sale on eBay for a few dollars. Right? Mystery artifacts. I'm 99% sure it's from Tibet. Nobody's been able to figure out what it is yet. It might be for yarn and for wrapping for string, but at this point, all our research, we don't know. Great mystery artifact. Right? Tibetan prayer bowl. So it does have the prayers inside, and every culture prays differently. Some cultures literally pray with smoke going to heaven, or hands clasped, or singing songs. But this is a list of prayers that are supposed to turn. So I have to rebuild this one. It's pretty old and in bad shape, but it has potential. It appears to be a prayer ball that you can hook on a belt, carry with you, and turn a knob and send prayers to heaven. Clockwise goes up, counterclockwise brings it down. Don't bring them down, you'll make people mad. But it's a prayer bowl, and there's writing to translate if a student had an interest in doing that for a project. Trade beads. If you saw the first lecture, because there is another video that I'm submitting with this application, you saw these beads. One little blue bead, cut and faceted, traded for a human being. 12 red beads for a human being. One little thing like that, and this took me a long time to acquire these specific trade beads because they're very well identified in history, is shocking for kids, but they hold it and look at it, and it's beyond their comprehension. But that emotion, that shock, that anger, if you watch the video, the other video, you're going to see and hear some of my kids crying. The slavery artifacts, the stories are just so shocking. They just seem so wrong to us, which is great. We've come so far. But we're not done yet. We still got work to do. Sometimes it takes the energy of emotion to create a memory. And the science behind it is fascinating. Anything that's traumatized you creates a memory that sometimes doesn't go away. If it's a good memory, like a learning moment or a shock, or like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. That's what I want. The artifacts will create those emotions. Political buttons. Somebody walked in the door. I haven't even sorted them yet, right? Sometimes you get things that honestly should have stayed with the family. But if the family doesn't want it, they're going to throw it away, use it. I'm not a hoarder. I get lots of jokes about hoarders. Yes, you can all laugh if you want to. I'm not a hoarder. Hoarders, okay, I've cleaned 2 hoarders' houses out to help them, friends of mine from church. It's gross. Milk bottles, dead animals, dead rats, mold. I love Lavinia. She passed away a few years ago. She was a lifelong friend. She was like my grandma, extra grandma at church. They'd had 5 house fires and she still lived there. So I'm not a hoarder. I'm actually prejudiced. If I can't find a way to teach with an artifact, it doesn't hold power for me. It's just a thing. And I'll take everything they donate and find homes for it across the district. Oh, World War I, I've already got one of those. Pass it up to the high school teacher. But every now and then you get things that just shock you. This is World War II. This is a presidential flag. This is the old president's seal of the United States. 4 stars, the eagle. And sorry, it's a regular class day before conferences start, and it looks like they're doing announcements. So if I'm talking loud, am I okay over it, Bay?
Yeah, you're probably fine.
So look at the eagle's head. Notice how the eagle's facing the arrows for war. Because our president's the commander-in-chief of all the soldiers. But the olive branch, which was the reward from the first Olympics, giant jars of olive oil, if it's truly authentic, 13 leaves, 13 olives, 13 arrows for the 13 colonies. This is hand-sewn, and it's double-sided. So it actually does both sides. You fly this on a ship, and the extra grommets tell us Navy for wind. When the president's on board, so everybody knows to protect it. So this student's grandfather had been on a ship in World War II. We know that this flag was used before FDR died. Franklin Delano Roosevelt didn't like it. It's too warlike. He wanted a symbol that showed that we're prepared for war, but we hope for peace. So he actually redesigned the new presidential seal where the eagle's head is facing the olive branch. We hope for peace, but we're prepared for war. Very rarely do we have the eagle's head facing towards the arrows. So he changed that. Harry Truman had it passed before he was buried so that his casket would have the new presidential seal. So this was flown on a ship in World War II under FDR. We don't know any more history on it. All of those ship's logs are not digitally scanned. You actually have to go and read them. Future homework for Mr. Hileman. All right, I think we're going to shift over here. World War II, every 8th grader we have studies Anne Frank and the Holocaust. And every high school class studies the Holocaust. So we've had kids donate things from grandmas and grandpas. Here's a Nazi armband, something you wear that says who you're loyal to, who you connect with, right? I have a Hitler Youth one, and that one is actually on loan to another school. And that one is really powerful for my kids to see. And you know what? There's a book I need to grab I forgot to get out. So it turns out that Hitler eliminated the Boy Scouts and then eliminated the Girl Scouts. Didn't kill them, he just canceled the program. And he made the Hitler Youth. And this is his quote. This is a book about the Hitler Youth I got at the Holocaust Memorial Museum. I begin with the young. We older ones are used up. But my magnificent youngsters, look at these men and boys. What material. With them I can create a new world. Well, he's right. His intention is horribly wrong and terrible and negative and bad. But he's right. The youth are the beginning of tomorrow. And when we show that Hitler armband and they talk about joining and becoming a Nazi, bothers my kids. This armband came in last spring. And it took a long time to translate. It is from a ghetto. I got to get the name. I can't even say it. Village-Pole. And it's a ghetto. You and I know the ghettos are a pre-staging area to take them to the death camps. But they didn't know that. They thought it was a staging area to move them somewhere better. This is a stamp from the Ghetto Council to approve the armband's power. This is the SS stamp saying they approve it. And if you see the Stars of David in red and blue, like an ambulance, this is a medic who can go in and out of the ghetto with permission from both sides to offer medical assistance. Here's a Japanese soldier's prayer flag, usually worn inside the shirt, so that the emperor and the symbol of your country can protect you. Many of them are signed with everybody in the town. And some have bullet holes. They were collected by veterans coming home. Even a dog tag with a man's name written on it with a collection of bullets. Why these bullets? We'll never know. But it's one of those mysteries the artifact leads kids to write. So the swastika, like a citizenship pin that they handed out before votes, some of them are gold. It would be like passing out $50 bills before you go in to vote. Who are you going to vote for? And if you wear this, it says who you're loyal to. We've all seen the pictures with the flags all over the town. I love the sound of music when the colonel comes home and it's hanging above his house and he just yanks the flag down. You go to jail for that. So even one little pin can shock kids that everybody was wearing this to say they're loyal. Or are they just wearing it so they don't get in trouble? It raises questions. But then they don't understand the swastika. So you read about my school in my paper. I've got every color student you can imagine. And I always tease my kids, I never met a white person. Everybody's just a different shade of different colors. But there's a hidden, invisible minority within my school. We are 25 miles south of the Command and Staff College, which is a college for military officers from all over the world. And they don't always want to live in Fort Leavenworth because Fort Leavenworth has the state penitentiary and the federal penitentiary. So they drive 20 miles down here and live here. I've had students from Palestine and Israel in the same class together. It leads to incredible conversations. But some of my Buddhist, Sikh, Hindu, I've got so many different religions in the building, and nobody wears a sign that says, hey, I'm Jehovah's Witness. You can't tell. So when we talk about things, I have to be very careful and we share. Well, the swastika from a Chinese prayer bead can offend a Jewish student. right? Or my Buddhist students, 3 buttons unbuttoned, gold chain, gold Buddha, and sometimes there's a swastika in the belly button. It's not a swastika, it's a symbol for eternity, like this one, or the sun, or circle of life. So we have to understand that that's different. My students are even shocked to learn that a little bracelet from Native Americans, they agreed never to make jewelry with a swastika again by 1933. They already knew what was coming somehow, and they knew it was bad. If you look at this one very careful, there's a sun in the middle. That's what it meant to them. But kids don't always know that. There's always history. Now, this one was a lucky find in a box of coins. It's a Boy Scout token that you get if you buy the Boy Scout shoes from the Boy Scout store. It's a lucky token, and it has a giant swastika on it for good luck. And it has a rabbit's foot, it has a 4-leaf clover, it has a wishbone, and some Egyptian hieroglyphics we've never been able to translate. It's a good luck token. I've even seen Christmas cards and birthday cards with swastikas from the 1920s. It's funny how that symbol has now means something completely different. But sometimes we don't teach that. So when I'm sitting in this classroom, and I have Jewish, Sikh, Hindu, Buddhist, Jehovah's Witness, which is really cool because they stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, but they are not allowed to put their hand over their heart or talk, right? Just out of respect, which we talk about the Olympics. Somebody else won the gold medal, their national anthem plays, you stand out of respect. But you don't have to pledge to them, you just show respect. Latter-day Saint with different sects, SECT, splinter groups, they're very different views. Every type of Christian, many different types, and all of these views together in the same school. So we teach about so many different cultures and religions, but we're not teaching the religion. So it's fascinating with the artifacts. People are throwing things away every single day. This man is a Pearl Harbor survivor. He was at Schofield Barracks, one of the barracks the field was air-bombed. He survived. He went to the 50th anniversary, had a pearl from Pearl Harbor, has all the pins, the Arizona Memorial. His kids threw away 17 bags of trash from his house when they cleaned it out, and this was on the trash pile. And the neighbor happened to be a computer teacher, a friend of mine, and she grabbed it, and she called me and said, "Hey, do you want this?" Yes. I missed all the bags. They were already in the dump. I have nightmares about what else was thrown away that way. Because, you know, who knows? Pictures, letters, uniforms, I don't know. But there's so many things out there that people don't always value. Schools can become a source for that. I did not know until we inherited this from a grandfather that they printed money for the SS officers for a canteen, a goodie store, a reward store inside the concentration camps. So this is actually an SS bill for them to buy treats and rewards while they're killing and exterminating humans. Papers or passes, it folds closed, it's open to last. This is a man's German passport or pass that he could actually use, literally, to go around Germany. So it tells the history of that. Here's another fun one. It's a geode, and it's a big one. And it actually was translucent white till it rolled in all the ash from the volcano. One of the things I put in my paper is that every one of my students is a genius. They just have different skills. The kid who won't shut up, future lawyer, hire them now. The kid that's always doing cartwheels, future gold medal gymnast. The one who's always building stuff with paper, future architect. They just have to figure out their skill. You may not see it from the outside, but if we use education to see the inside, there's something beautiful in there. We just have to get to it. And now you're laughing about the analogy of cracking them open to get inside. Well, they're middle school and high school. Sometimes it's necessary, but it works. Even the slave ball and chain that was featured in the other video, the fact that somebody had it on their fireplace and didn't believe what it was. Okay, another simple trick. Every teacher out there should have an old camera in their classroom. Everybody. And you let kids pick a favorite place in time or history that they could have a picture of with this camera. And then write about it. One that came up today when I was setting up the display for this video is one of the little girls said, "Oh, I would love to see pictures of the Titanic right before it sank," because she'd heard the story about people hearing music in the boats, and we believe the band actually was still playing music to the very end. It's a great idea, but just an old camera and let them use their imaginations. Trick the kids. Look, it's a fork and a spoon. Until you study this one, it says United States Navy. And then this one has the German Third Reich eagle and the swastika on it. So they're similar, but they're not. I use a lot of video-assisted lecture. Want to go 10,000 BC? Do you want to go on a mammoth hunt with prehistoric people? Waterworld, what happens if all the ice on the planet melts? You don't have to show the whole video. Show a clip, tell a story. Nefertiti, 5-hour archaeology movie. Great movie. It'll kill normal people. Almost killed me. But it shows a mummy rise from the dead. Did they really rise? No, but the Egyptians believed they did, and people's beliefs affect their actions. Time machine, 800,000 years of time travel. Water erosion, soil erosion, desertification, shrubberies, coniferous trees. Everything you ever studied in geography and geology is in that clip. The Messenger, the whole movie for one trebuchet firing. 3 trebuchets with clay pots filled with oil and fire. 180 trebuchets attacking a city in the Crusades. Very good to teach. And then I show one of the moving maps in my handouts that literally shows how many times the Middle East has been conquered in 5,000 years. That map will blow your mind away. Season of the Witch. I bought it because it shows plague doctors looking like alien bird people healing a plague victim, and then they take off their masks and you suddenly realize they're nothing but humans. There's a plague doctor's mask right up here, Bailey, if you can follow me, and you can see the mask. It looks alien, but in reality, it's just somebody who's wearing this to put flowers in there to make a homemade gas mask. They didn't understand germs. They thought if you saw a sick person, you got sick, so they used red crystals. Witness with Harrison Ford. Literally shows a barn raising. The whole community coming together. Clint Eastwood, Pale Rider. Only movie I know that shows Wild West strip mining, where they use all the water pressure just to destroy the environment to get gold. Illegal now in most places, but it shows it. Several of the articles I wrote talked about the dolls. I do have more Barbie dolls than any man you'll ever meet. I have quite a few G.I. Joes too. Barbie was legitimately shot at pretty hardcore in the 80s because you had to be blonde hair, blue-eyed, anorexic, have 3 ribs removed, and have cancer to have that body shape. It wasn't fair to girls to see that. And if everybody in this room was of color, and we went to Walmart to buy toys, and all the toys are white, what does that say to you? So they started Dolls of the World. Now this one's beat up. She traveled with me everywhere I went when I was Teacher of the Year. This is my South African princess. Ceremonial neck rings, headdress, facial structure, skin color, eye color, accoutrement, even the leg and ankle bracelets, and her family ceremonial walking stick with the history of the family. On the back is her history. And if you go to the website, she has a name that you can't find until you go to the website and look it up. Here's my buffalo soldier. And if you look at the African American thick curly hair, so I got a stuffed bison a few years ago. That hair, when Native Americans saw a bison, and now come back to me, and then they saw African American soldiers, they thought they were bison that transformed into human soldiers. They were terrified of them. Helped bring the peace. Viking Barbie with wings on her helmet. I hate to break it to you, no Viking helmet with wings or horns has ever been found. Ever. It's just a cultural misnomer. So 2 girls were upset, wrote a letter to Mattel, the power of writing. And Mattel wrote them a big apology. We're sorry, it looked cool, we just succumbed to that myth that they had wings. And then they got a big voucher for their teacher to get a free doll. So I got a free doll, it worked out. And here's my Navajo princess. She's the newer style. So G.I. Joes have plastic hair. All the dolls I play with, the hair doesn't move. If you take one of these dolls out of the box, the hair goes everywhere. So they now have a lid that comes off so you can see the turquoise, the silver, symbol of the sun. See, it's turned to a star instead of a swastika. All of her jewelry, and then the back that has the links to the history of the Navajo culture. There are hundreds of these dolls. I thought there were only 20 or 30 when I started, but there's hundreds. I do not have all of them. I only have the ones that I teach about. And then last, Kids for the Projects. 2 little 6th grade girls made this. Do you know where heaven is? Or do you know if we're in heaven? They compared heaven from every single culture we studied. Valhalla, Nirvana, eternity, Mount Olympus, the underworld, and then they compared and contrasted all the religious beliefs. Another team put together a small nightgown and covered it using all the pictures of children in slave labor in the 1880s and 1890s being paid pennies a day and risking their life before we passed the law about education. Never know what the kids are going to come up with, which is good. Anything can be an artifact. There's a little bit of sand from Normandy Beach from D-Day. It's just a little sand. But knowing where it's from gives it power. Here's a page from a 1613 portfolio Bible, where the S's and the F's are the same. It's the numbers of Israel. It's naming the tribes. And the kids are looking at the letters and the decorations like for the letter A. It's not illuminated, but it's still fascinating to them. And then a Civil War newspaper. So it turns out they had centerfolds in the Civil War. Don't get your hopes up. They showed the battles. They drew them. And I can laminate it and then pass it out so kids can read a war magazine or newspaper from the Civil War talking about the generals and the battles of the day. Anything can teach with. I made this video because when I show the museum to people, and if you haven't seen it and haven't been here, it's almost impossible to describe. It wasn't just me, the community, the students, everybody worked with it. Yes, I was a spark that started a fire. Yes, I'm a cheerleader. I had a secretary who teased me I was the Pied Piper. I didn't play a flute. Maybe I'm beating a drum, or honestly I have a whole drum corps. But people follow it and they get excited. It's something you can believe in 100%. The award that we're applying for is not just for me. Our plan is to take the money, if we go the distance on this, and build a permanent museum in addition to this district. And when I started talking to people about the application and should I do it and how would we work and the politics, there were suggestions to just take the money and do your own thing. I don't want to do that. I want to honor the community and the kids and the students. I don't want the award to take me away, and I love the fact that this award says if you are recognized, you must promise to teach for 5 more years. I'm already planning for another 15. As long as my legs and everything hold out, I'm here, man. The irony of the universe is that we want to build a permanent museum. We want to have the archaeology classes create the displays. Everything has a place and it's labeled and set. So that when my time comes to step down, it's easier for somebody else to step into it. I also want to create summer school classes for the hundreds of kids that are trapped in middle school that don't have cars, have strict rules who can come over and who can't, where you can go, and teach summer school classes right here in the community. And the most important aspect, what we've discovered here, what we've learned here in Kansas with the use of teaching artifacts is not being taught at any university level. I want to fill that need. I want to have a week-long conference, use the grant money, I'm going to have to help with the whole investing thing, and set it up so that teachers can come here and spend time in the museum. How do you get artifacts? How do you do artificial digs? You don't need the dig tables. You can use tubs. You can dig a space outside and dig when it's warm. The possibilities are endless, and we're excited to share that with you. Thank you for your time, thank you for your help, and thank you for your support. Have a great day.